Hey guys, welcome to GED Math Level 2 practice test. So on this one we have 19 questions. The questions are all in the description along with the answer possibilities, the answer choices. So I recommend, if you haven't already, go ahead and take the test in the description and then watch the video, and we'll go through each of these questions, how to solve them, what the correct answer is, all that kind of stuff. At the beginning of each of these videos, I always say, or try to remember to say, from a score standpoint, you need a 145 on each GED subject area. That is approximately 65%. And so with 19 questions, you're looking for like somewhere around 13 out of 19 correct would get you to that kind of bare minimum. If you have some interest in college or get an associate's degree, anything like that, bachelor's degree, is then you want to bump that number up a little bit. You'd rather see that around 75 or 80%. That will really help you with the admissions. So if you're in a good place after the practice test, great, move on to level 3. If you're struggling with it a little bit more, we have a mobile app free to install. Recommend checking it out. It'll customize to you as you're answering questions, give you detailed feedback and the customization so that we know exactly what videos and what kind of content to send to you to help you out and make the process smoother. So, having said all of that, let's jump in. Question 1. I need my pen. Okay. So it says Tom drove 100 miles first 2 hours, then he hit rush hour, only drove 60 miles the next 2 hours. What was his overall speed? Okay, so this is a distance equals rate times time question. So that's a formula that you just have to know. Okay, is that distance equals rate times time, and with these types of questions, they will give you 2, right? And they will ask for 1. So speed is basically asking you for rate. So they gave us distance and they gave us time. So it started off and it said Tom drove 100 miles, right? In the first 2 hours. Don't worry about time yet. Then he hit rush hour, then he drove 60 miles. Okay, so 100 plus 60, he drove 160 miles total, right? So that's the distance. The rate we don't know. And time. So he drove 100 miles the first 2 hours and then 60 miles next 2 hours. So overall he drove 4 hours. Okay, and if we divide each side by 4, 160 divided by 4 is 40, and then we should come up with 40 miles an hour is the overall speed for the trip. Perfect. Moving on, Q2. Phil runs a 5-minute mile. How many feet per second? Okay, so we've got 5,280 feet. This is also distance equals rate times time. That's the distance, right? 5,280 feet is distance. And they give us time, so they give it to us as a 5-minute mile, right? So 5 minutes is the time, okay? But they're asking feet per second. So we need to get this 5 minutes into a second number. How many seconds are in 5 minutes? And then that's going to help us out, okay? So if I go 5 minutes times 60 seconds per minute equals 300 seconds. Okay, so he goes 5,280 feet in 5 minutes, which is the same as 5,280 feet in 300 seconds times something, right? And now we're able to go ahead and find out what is the feet per second. And so if I divide 5,280 by 300, once we calculate that out, we come up with 17.6 feet per second. Question 3. Okay, time and a half, right? So these questions show up a lot. So Kristen makes $18 an hour and gets time and a half for overtime, more than 40 hours, okay? Last week, worked 50 hours. How much did she make for the week? Okay. So we start off with, she makes 18 an hour, right? Times 40. So that's the first 40 hours of the week. And that 18 times 40 will save you crunching numbers, equals 720. And the final 10 hours, because she worked 50 hours total, right? Sorry, the 10 should be there, because that's hours. Where's my eraser? Okay, and then as far as what she gets paid per hour, is it's now going to be 18, which was her hourly rate, times, when we say time and a half, that means times 1.5. If we multiply that out, 18 times 1.5 is 27. So shoot. And for those last 10 hours of the week, she's making 27 an hour. 27 an hour times those 10 hours is 270. And then we just add it up. And so her total for the week is going to be 990. There it is right there. Answer choice C. So hopefully that made sense. Perhaps takes a little bit of practice. And again, anything where you feel like I wish I could see this 3 or 4 times, is being able to see it has value. And so we do have specific videos that go over like things like this a few different times. They'll be below all the questions in the description. Worth checking that out. But once you have the concept down, really got to go and practice it yourself. That's where the app's valuable. So they're both valuable, right? Doing the practice test, watching videos on concepts that you struggled with a little bit, and getting into the app so you can practice answering all those questions. A lot of times we can watch somebody else do it and it looks like, yeah, I got it. But then you do it yourself and you don't have it, right? It happens to like almost anybody in the process of learning and understanding things. Sienna paid $1,500 down and has paid $150 per month for the last 12 months. How much has she paid in total? Okay, so we start off with, she put $1,500 down, right? So you start off, we know there's $1,500 out of the pocket, and then plus $150 a month for the last 12 months. Okay, so 150 times 12 is going to be, let's see here, 1,800, yeah? And we started with a 1,500. And if we add those two together, she has paid 3,300. Answer choice D. Okay, moving on. Question 5. Okay, decimals to fractions. So here's how we do these. So you look at 0.0040 and we're not sure what that equals in a fraction, right? Okay, so if we start off with 0.40, hopefully we can know that that is 4/10. That was supposed to be a 4. 4/10, okay? And so what's going to happen here is every time I add a 0 immediately to the right of the decimal, right? So I put a 0 here and then the 40. That means I'm adding 1 0 to the denominator. So rather than now than 10, it's out of 100. Okay, you want to say that one more time? And like however many times they ask me to do it, I can do that. So now we're going to have one more 0 immediately to the right, which is the actual question, right? Equals 4 still in the numerator, and now I'm going to add one more 0 in the denominator, and that's what 0.0040 equals, 4 out of 1,000. Okay, and now we look, and unfortunately 4 out of 1,000 is not an option, right? But put the 4 over 1,000 over here. We have a little room to work. If I divide the top and the bottom by 4, I get 1 out of 250. Yeah, so what they're really saying is that this 4 out of 1,000 just wasn't completely reduced. 1 out of 250 is reduced, so answer choice D is what we're looking for, right? And so when you do these kind of things, like sometimes you've done all the math right, you know, you got to 4 out of 1,000, and then you don't see any of the answer choices, and then you say, oh man, I guess I got to guess, and then you just take a 25% chance that you get it right. So just make sure that before you just guess, make sure you've reduced it completely, right? 'Cause a lot of times that's all it is. Okay, cost per serving question. So there's a box of crackers, contains 6 servings, and weighs 108 grams. The box is being sold for $4.50 at Hank's Helping Hand grocery store. What is the cost per serving? Right? Cost per serving. Okay. So as we look at this, we can see cost is $4.50, 6 servings, 108 grams. Okay. So the 108 grams, there's nothing in here about weight. It's cost per serving, right? So they just threw that in there to throw you off. And so we put in there as you get practice, you know, things that people do on these tests to try to throw you off. Okay, so cost is first, right? So cost is $4.50. That goes in the numerator, the top part of the fraction. Per serving, 6 servings, 6. Okay, then we just divide it, and 4.5 divided by 6 is 0.75, so 75 cents per serving. C. Okay, it is very important that you do it in the right order, right? So if you put 6 in the numerator, so if you put the servings on the top part of the fraction and the money on the bottom part of the fraction, then it would be 6 divided by 4.50, and then you would get the wrong answer. Okay, then you would come up with that answer D, $1.50. So you got to make sure the money is in the numerator, the number of servings is in the denominator. If you do that, you're perfect and you'll get the right answer. So in this case, 75 cents per serving. Okay, so it says today boots are 15% off. What is the discount on $50 pair of boots? Okay, so normally they're 50. Discount is 15%, so 0.15. And we go ahead and multiply those two together, and if we do that, we come up with 7.50, right? And so in this case, they just asked what was the discount, yeah? And so we're done. Now, if they asked us what is the new total, then we would take the original total, which was this 50, and subtract it from 750, and then you'd go, so 50 minus 750 equals $42.50, and that's what the answer would be. So I only say that because it's equally likely that you're asked this way, just the discount. What is the discount versus what is the new price? So you want to know how to do both. Okay, so Stephanie is running a 10,000 yard race, which is almost a 10K. So far she has run 6,500 yards. What fraction of the race does she still have left? Okay, so it was is a 10,000 yard race. So she's gone 6,500. And so if we subtract that out, that equals 3,500 yards left, right? So unfortunately, we haven't answered the question yet. We know we have 3,500 yards left, but they want this in some kind of a fraction. Okay, so we have 3,500 left, and divided by, and they want to know what the fraction of the total race, right? So 3,500 divided by 10,000. Okay, then we can cross off some zeros. So like we'll cross this one off and this one off. Cross this one off and this one off. And so now we have 35 out of 100, or 35%, right? And so if we go ahead and are calculating these out, we can find that 7 out of 20 equals 35%. If we need to set it up as an equation to be able to figure that out. That's perfectly fine. 7 out of 20 equals some number out of 100, right? And then if we go ahead and do all that stuff out, you get 20x equals 700, x equals 35, or 35%. So that's how we go about doing this. This one's trickier because it would be a lot easier if they just gave us the percentages rather than the fractions, but they did not. They decided to make it hard, but this is how we do it. Okay, question 9. So it says 15 is 20% of what number? Okay, so we need to set up a formula. Here, they word it kind of tricky, but you will see wording like this. So it says 15 over something is 20%. We want to know that 20%, because they're going to have to make this a fraction for it to be a formula, that 20% equals 1/5. Okay, so being able to connect those dots and say 20% is 1/5 is important. And then it's 15 is 20% of some number, right? And so once we've done this, then we can just cross multiply. X times 1 is just x. 15 times 5 is 75. Okay, and so we're saying 15 is 20% of 75. That's correct. 15 over 75 equals 1 over 5. Okay, so there we go. The mistake people make a lot of the time, they see 15 is 20%, and they just go, 15 times 0.2, and that's 3, which is one of the answer choices, but unfortunately not right. So sometimes it takes a little practice to get used to setting up these formulas. Put in the practice, and you will be there. 12.5% of the people in a town vote for Party A. All others vote for Party B. How many vote for Party B in a town of 800? Okay, so if we start off, so we have 800 in the town, right? And 12.5%, or 0.125, vote for Party A. And so if we go ahead and multiply that out, 800 times 0.125, you'll just have to trust me, that equals 100. Okay, and so that means there's 100 people vote for Party A. Okay, but the question was Party B, right? So if 100 vote for Party A, there's 800 in the town, 800 minus 100, and we end up with 700 people voting for Party B. So again, we got 700 for Party B, 100 for Party A. That totals up 800. We're good to go. Question 11. Okay, another word problem with variables. Okay, so it says Brad is n years old. So we'll go ahead and write that one down right now. Okay, so we got an n for Brad. Okay, and I'll go ahead and write this out, equals Brad. And then it says Matt is 5 years younger than Brad. So before we get too far, let's just do Matt. Okay, Matt's 5 years younger than Brad, right? So Brad's n, Matt is n minus 5. So we want it all to be in one variable. Okay, so n minus 5 is Matt. Matt's 5 years younger than Brad, and he's 3 years older than Kevin. Okay, so Kevin is 3 years younger than Matt, right? If Matt is n minus 5, that makes Kevin n minus 8. That's a Kevin there. Okay, so then if you combine all these, we have 3 n's, right? And we have negative 5 and negative 8. So negative 5 minus 8 is negative 13. N plus n plus n is 3n, and we end up with 3n minus 13. Okay, so similar to a lot of these, like the math itself isn't really all that hard, but it's getting word problems and how to punch them in and make them variables. That can take some practice. Again, repeating myself, app is the best place to be for that, right? It gives you lots of practice at doing it, and then gives you nice feedback, kind of like you're getting right here, so that you get very comfortable with how to do it, if you made a mistake, what you did wrong, things like that. Okay, let's see here. Another word problem. People ask about word problems probably more than anything else for the GED. So if you're struggling with it, you are not alone. And let's see how we do this one. Joe, Ron, and Steve are bartenders at Libation Station. Okay, so on Friday night, Joe made twice what Ron made. Ron made $100 more than Steve. Together they made $1,100. How much did Joe make? Okay, so when, like with something like this, I would not do this the same way I did the previous one. So here's just a different way to do it. You can do the same thing, but you gotta look. The math's starting to get a little more complicated here when you're comparing three people like this. So what I would do is, so the question is Joe, right? How much did Joe make? I'm just going to plug it in. So let's take the first one. So let's say if Joe is 300, which is answer choice A, then we just plug in the rest of the stuff and see if it works out right. So Joe made twice what Ron made. On Friday night, Joe made twice what Ron made. Okay, so if Joe is 300, Ron is 150. Ron made $100 more than Steve. So that would mean Steve is only 50, right? And their total was 1,100. Okay, so this does not equal 1,100, right? 300 plus 150 is 450, plus 50 is 500. So we're not even close. We're not even halfway there. Okay, so 300 was way too low. So eraser. Okay, so if it was way too low, then let's look at answer choice D, which is the biggest one there. So let's say Joe is 600. Okay, and it says again, Joe made twice what Ron made. Okay, so 600 divided by 2 is 300, and Steve, lowly Steve, the worst bartender at Libation Station, it says Ron made $100 more than Steve. So if Ron's 300, Steve is 200. Okay, and then if we add these up, 600 plus 300 is 900. 900 plus 200 is 1,100. So answer choice D looks like a winner. So that's plugging in. So the nature of standardized tests, GED is a standardized test. You don't have to show your work, right? So it's not like math class in that way. You just have to get the answer right. So if that's easier, the plugging in part is easier, do that. If you like writing out the formula, do that, right? This involves less math. If it's complicated and I'm not sure how to set up the formula, I'll be looking to plug in. It's not a bad idea. All right, Billy the Kid scored 72 points in 2 basketball games. Okay, so our total is going to be 72. We can already know that. 2 basketball games. The second game, he scored 10 more points than he did in the first. How many did he score in the first? Okay, so we have 2 games. We don't know the total for either, but we do know that in the second game, he scored 10 more than he did in the first. Okay, and that's how you set that up. I would set this one up as an equation. But you can plug in. We'll show you how to do that in a second too, if you prefer. So, right, x plus x is 2x, plus 10 is 72. Subtract 10 from both sides. 2x, 62. Divide each side by 2, so we just have x. And we'll end up with 31. Okay, and that's answer choice B. Okay, now if you prefer not to do this, like in this question, you could easily avoid it. So again, if you want to plug in, you take your first answer here, 27. Okay, and that's the first game, right? It says in the second game he scored 10 more, right? So you'd say, okay, game 1 was 27, game 2 was 37. Add those 2 up and see if it totals 72. Okay, so it's not going to. That one's going to total 64, right? And then you go, okay, I need a little bit greater. Then you go with answer choice B. You go, okay, 31 first game, 10 more in the second game. It's 41. 31 plus 41, 72. Answer choice B. Okay, so either way, all that matters is you get the right answer. Either way works. So if you like plugging in more, great, go ahead and do that. If you like setting up equations more, fine, go ahead and do that. Eventually, you're probably going to get to questions where you do have to be able to use an equation because it'll just be too complicated and they won't let you plug in. But you could easily plug in for this one as you could have for question number 12, the most previous question. Okay, 260 points on 3 tests so far. Last test, she got a 90. The first 2 tests, she received exactly the same score. What did she get on the first 2? Okay, so we start off with 260 for the 3 tests, right? And they tell us that on the last test, she got a 90. So we can kind of just eliminate that, and then we'll know 260 minus 90 is 170. So we know that on the first 2 tests, she got a 170, right? Because we just took her total minus the most previous test. Okay, so 170, and it says she received exactly the same score. So all you're going to do then is 170 divided by 2 equals 85. Okay, so she got an 85 on the first 2 tests to total 170 points. Then she got a 90 on the last test, and then 170 plus 90 got her to 260. So it works out. This is a hard one. I would say in my opinion, and not just my opinion. So all these questions are coming from our app, and so we have data on like what percentage of people answer each question correctly. So this one does one of the worst on all these level 2 questions. So let's go through it. So it just means people get confused somewhere. So the first 2 terms of a sequence are 3 and 5. So go ahead and write that in. 3, 5. Okay. Each subsequent term, right, so the next term, is found by adding the previous 2 numbers together and dividing the sum by -2. What is the 5th term? Okay, so they make us go quite a ways, which is why people miss. There's lots of chances for a mistake. So the first one, right, it says you take the 2 previous terms, 3 plus 5, divide it by -2, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. So 3 plus 5 divided by -2 equals 8 over -2 equals 8 divided by 2 is 4. Throw a negative on there, -4, right? Okay, so that's the 3rd term. Okay, and so again, what we do is we add the 2 most recent terms together, divide by -2. Okay, so let's do the next one. So we have 5 and -4, right? So 5 plus -4 divided by, that keeps getting in my way, -2. Okay, so 5 plus -4 is the same as 5 minus 4. So that's 1 over -2. Okay, so the next one is -1/2. Okay, we're still looking good, hopefully. And let's do it one more time. So let me erase so I can have a little bit more room here. Okay, almost there for you guys. Just be patient with me. Okay, so add the 2 terms together, right? So I got -1/2 plus -4, and it says divide by -2. Okay, so -4 plus -1/2 is -4.5, or just -4.5. Okay, so we got negative 4.5 as the numerator divided by negative 2. Okay, and so if I divide these, remember that I got a negative here and a negative here. So two negatives always makes a positive. And so what we have here is, if we divide this out, it would end up being 2.25. Okay, 2.25. And 0.25 is the same as 2 1/4, right? Because I can see they're not decimals here in our answer choices, right? So 2 1/4 is our answer. Okay, I do not see that as a possible answer. But right, if I write it as an improper fraction, which a few of these are, is 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, equals 9/4. Answer choice A. Okay, so it requires you to do a bunch of math and not make a mistake, but the actual math in and of itself isn't that hard. Perhaps the 4.5 divided by 2, if you're doing it without a calculator, getting 2.25 may have taken a second. But besides that, not too bad. Just got to take your time and get some practice in. Okay, another one. What is the fifth term in the following sequence? Okay, so this is one of the most common examples, but these pattern questions are a little tricky. Okay, and so what you're looking for, so in this one, okay, so I start with 2 and then I go to 4. Okay, so immediately I should be thinking like, okay, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so maybe they did one of those. Okay, so what's the next one? 12. Okay, and so I'm thinking, okay, first one it was either plus or multiply by 2. Now with this one, it's if it's addition, it's add 8, so that doesn't seem that likely. Multiply 4 times 3 is 12. So, right, we did times 2, and we did times 3. That's what I'm thinking right now. Okay, what's the next number? 48. Okay, and so as I see times 2 and times 3, the first thing I'm testing out is, well, is this one times 4? And it ends up, yeah, 12 times 4 is 48. Okay, so what do you think the next one's going to be, right? Is pretty good chance that the next one is times 5, isn't it? And if we go 48 times 5, we get 240. Okay, and then I look down there, answer choice D, looks good, and there we go. So that is one of the most common patterns, is multiplying by one more each successive number. So times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5 is the pattern for this one. Okay, circles now. So it says, what is the area of a circle with a diameter of 10? Okay, so we got a couple things we need to know here. First, this will show up. You have to know this formula. So if you don't know it, you have to somehow get it into your head, right? It's not hard to get into your head. It's just a matter of putting a little effort. So area equals pi times radius squared. Okay, that's the area of a circle. And knowing that here they only tell us diameter, right? And so like diameter, here's my horrible circle. Diameter is something that goes all the way from one end of the circle to the other. Okay, the radius is right here in the middle. So the radius is only half as big as diameter. Okay, so if the diameter is 10, the radius is 5, right? Just half. If they had told us the diameter was 20, the radius would be 10, just half of it. Okay, so now we know radius, we got everything we need to know. Area equals pi times 5 squared. 5 squared is 25, right? So there's 25. Here's my terrible looking pi. Area is 25 pi, which is answer choice D. Okay, hang with me. We only got 2 left. Okay, another radius question. So if you see, when you see something like this where I put in, 2 consecutive radius questions, is it just a sign like when it shows up a lot? Okay, so that one was actually an easier one. This one's a little bit tougher, but conceptually you're really doing the same stuff. So it says radius of circle A is 2. If the radius of circle A has a length of 2 units and the radius of circle B has a length of 10 units, what is the ratio of area of A to B? Okay, so first of all, we have A. So it's still the pi r squared, right? So A has pi times length of 2 units, so 2 squared, okay? That's the area for A. And then for B, again, we have the pi, and it says 10 units, right? Times 10 squared, okay? So if we go and multiply this out, 2 squared is 4, so circle A has an area of 4 pi. 10 squared is 100. 10 times 10 is 100. Throw the pi on there at the end. Okay, so the area of circle B is 100 pi, right? And so if we can just sort of cancel these pi's off each other, right? Because they both have them on there, so they're both worth the same. And so we just have a ratio of 4 to 100. And sadly, that's not one of our choices, right? Okay, so we got to reduce further. So if I divide each of these, so if I add it 4 to 100 and 4 divided by 100, same thing. Okay, so if I divide each of these by 4, then 4 divided by 4 is 1 in the numerator. 100 divided by 4 is 25 in the denominator. And there we go, 1 to 25, 1 divided by 25, same thing. Okay, and so there's our answer, right? So really not that complicated from a math standpoint, but they did make us have the ability to know how to compare ratios. And that I had to solve for the area of 2 circles rather than 1. So of course there was a chance I might make a mistake with 2 more than with just 1. And then finally, we have Pythagorean theorem to close out level 2. So one leg of a right triangle is 4, the other is 6. What is the length of the hypotenuse? Okay, so I said right triangle, yeah? And so that would mean, we'll see like that thing right there, that signifies a right triangle. And what we need to know is that a squared, this is Pythagorean theorem, plus b squared equals c squared when it's a right triangle. And so it says one leg is 4, the other is 6, and so this is c right here, right? Essentially 4 would be a, 6 is b, and then this longer thing, which is the hypotenuse, is c. Okay, and then we got to solve for c. So we just plug this stuff in, right? So a is 4, we're saying. So we got 4 squared here, plus, we're saying b is 6. 6 squared equals, we don't know, c squared. Okay, and then we just got to square these numbers. So 4 squared is 16. Just 4 times 4 there is 16. 6 squared, 6 times 6, that's 36, equals c squared. Okay, and then we add 36 plus 16, that is 52, equals c squared. That's not a fun, easy, square rootable number, but we just do like this and do like that. C is the square root of 52. There we go, right there. Answer choice B is the square root of 52, and that is our answer. Okay, so that gets us to the end of the 19 questions for the level 2 GED math practice test. If anything I did doesn't make sense or confuses you, just leave a comment for us, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Trying to offer something that is more valuable. Might be worth looking at the videos below, so we connect them and let you know like which videos connect to exactly which questions and which concepts or topics. So hopefully that's useful for you. And you know, if the score isn't what you wanted, I would look at those videos to try to get more information into your brain about how to solve these types of problems, more looks at more different examples of these types of problems. That can be very useful. And then I would make sure I downloaded that app, right? Free install, start playing with it. And so the more you interact with the questions, the better your score is going to be. Anyways, I will see you guys on the next video, and I appreciate your time.